Good afternoon, everybody. It's October 30th, heading into Halloween, and we saw ourselves a spooky little sell-off today, down about 1% in the S&P 500. I just recorded this entire episode, and I had it muted, then I had to leave, so I'm going to try to make this a lot quicker. I want to go over market conditions, expected moves, what's taking on behind the scene right now. And really, that's all that matters as far as what the market's pricing for risk right now, because we have some big names that have been reporting earnings. So I want to walk you through that. But keep in mind, we saw a little bit of a sell-off here in the S&P 500. And is it really anything to be overly concerned about? Well, at the moment, no, not really, right? We're moving into a very bullish period in time based off of seasonality, and we just saw a massive move and we're pulling back a little bit. So if we were to see some more sell side, maybe look at around that 6,750, 6,800, maybe this gap fill as it backfills, but we just had some earnings reports. So if I go over here and we look at what reported, Apple just reported and saw, bam, a large move to the upside. It started off actually down slightly there, hitting the lower earnings expected move, and then we shot up to just outside of the upper expected move, and now we're trading right back within it. Microsoft did report, and the market sold off a little bit down to its earnings expected move, but bounced a little bit since that low point. If you look at Google saw a nice big move over here, but came in a little bit, and that happened to be right at around the upper weekly implied move. Amazon reported earnings after the bell. This is a 2 standard deviation move over here. We had Meta report, and bam, this little level, I was trading it intraday. That was the 2 standard deviation expected move. If you have no idea what these standard deviations are, or these expected moves that I'm talking about, don't worry, I'll talk a little bit more about them in a moment. If we take a look at the 10-year yield, saw a nice move to the upside these last few trading sessions. Now, is this just going to be another lower high being placed in? If so, that means now we can start looking back at TLT. We talked about it over here, saying that it could be a potentially good short, and now it's pulling back. Remember, we have a low, a higher low, a higher low, a higher low. We have a high, a higher high, a higher high, and a higher high. So now, as the 50 days starting to slope up, the 20 days starting to slope up, 20 days starting to slope up. We're above the year-to-date VWAP. The trend has changed in the shorter term here. So we start to look for dips and then buy this strength through, just like we saw over here on this flag pattern in the move up. And now we're seeing that slight of a pullback. If we take a look at the dollar itself has been catching a little bit of a bid, kind of basing out here. In Trump's first term in 2017, it found the low right there in September as well. It started rallying up, and then towards the back end of the year, later in the end of the year to the new year, it started going down. So is it going to follow the same path as it did in Trump's term in 2017? Well, it is right now. So we'll continue to monitor that and see what happens there. If I want to go over to my SPY on Trend Spider over here, I'm looking at the daily expected move. What's tomorrow's risk range going into tomorrow? Well, 685 to 686 to down here at about 674 to 673. Now, we had Apple report and Amazon report after the bell, and they're both up. So if I go look at overnight session, where are we? We're basically at the upper daily implied move. So if we start breaking through this tomorrow, it is always common that once you tag a weekly implied move, we start to come back off or we doodle around. And that's really what we're doing as it stands right now. If I go over to Google, right? Google saw positive earnings. This was the upper weekly implied move. And guess what? We're kind of pulling right back into it. Meta, right? Reported it came outside of its lower implied move, and now we're trading just outside of it. Let's see actually in the aftermarket. Yeah, we're basically right back at the weekly implied move, not too far off of it. And then we had also Microsoft report. And this is, we saw it move down today, right, on earnings, but earlier in the week, we tagged the upper weekly implied move and backed off. So overall, where are we? We're basically slightly unchanged to slightly up on the trading week overall. So that's what we got going on there. If we take a look at the S&P 500, the SPX, tomorrow's daily implied move is roughly at about 68, 67. So yeah, 66, 68, 67, we're basically trading in the aftermarket session right at around those levels. The lower 6,777, we are in positive gamma. What does this mean? It means that dealers look to buy the dip and sell the rip, and that's exactly what we're seeing. If we start to look more towards the upside, the end of year, the bigger target is going to be that 7,000 level. Anything above there for this year, I'd be significantly more cautious. Why? Because we have the JPM collar there, and as it stands right now, that's where a lot of the dealer gamma is. If I go into the net gamma, you can see that 7,000 level is really keying in on one of the massive call walls. Below that right there is 6,900, which we're just slightly under. 6,850, we're slightly under that, at least currently right now after the close, but we're basically between these two levels. So if we start slipping a little bit more, just watch maybe 6,800 would be one of those key levels to hone in on. I want to take a quick look at Bitcoin because Bitcoin's been relatively weak. The sailor to shift tool is still on a sell signal, sell trigger since I believe over here, and we haven't really gone anywhere since then. If I take a look at Bitcoin as itself in absolute value, we are nearing the lower end of this range, which we tended to see some buyers step in. Relative strength line looks rather weak comparably to the S&P 500. And then Ethereum is looking a little bit toppish here too as well. So the bulls basically, in short, they need to step in. They need to step in quick. So we don't see this thing like break down. And if we were to break down maybe 2,800 to 3,000, this range could be a potential level to watch buyers step back in. I'm not calling for that to happen, but it just doesn't look all too good right now. So once again, the bulls really need to step in and step in quick. Next, I wanted to really quickly go over my Discord group and show you some of the updates that I'm pretty happy about because they should be live now starting in tomorrow's trading session. We've worked out a lot of the bugs. It took me a long time, but for $16 a month, I'll just quickly show you everything that you get. Now, for $16 a month, you sign up through Patreon, and once you pick that plan, you sync your Discord up, and then you get all the benefits. Okay, so I just want to talk about my Asher bot, the Asher query. I talk about these expected moves, right? And 68% of the time, we go for those expected moves, and/or right the two standard deviation moves 95% of the time. But if you want synthesized expected moves for any equity that's optionable, this right here is a really amazing tool to do so. I now can type in eyeball range, type in the command, and I could say, I want to see what the expected move is for SPY. And that's what I have on my chart, along with my daily implieds. But you can see here, it shows for the next expected move. It hasn't fully updated yet. It shows the prior close at 629. So this will update to 10:30, right, which was today's close. That'll update at 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time with my API updates, but it'll give you your upper, your lower, your tier sigma moves, but you can also look not only at the daily, you can look at the weekly implied moves. So if I go to time frame, I can type in weekly and do weekly implied moves. And as you can see here, it might be small, but you see the upper level at 688.4. And if I go over to my TrendSpider app, that's 688.4. That's what it's at. Right, and then we came into those levels, kind of sunk off a little bit. So it's a really cool tool. I can also pull up monthly implied moves, and once again, I can use any ticker. Right, if I want to go eyeball range, and I wanted to type in MicroStrategy, right, and type that in. Right, it's going to give me the daily implied move for the next day. But once again, the API, it takes a while to load, so you have to do it either the next morning if you're Eastern Standard Time before the market opens, and or 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time sometime after then. Now, what's really cool, and by the way, there's also another one where I can go like IFAL PD. There's another thing that you can do. So if I wanted to see the premiums and discounts and whether it's trading at a premium or discount, I can type in a different command and it'll show me what it was 22 days ago, 5 days ago, 2 days ago, and what it currently is. So you can see we're trading at a very, very small premium, but then you can see the 1 month average and then the 1 month standard deviation. In the pinned comments, I have a little help video. You can also type in help or /help. And what that'll do, it'll bring up kind of a quick explanation of what this is, two pages, and then it'll show you kind of how to read the IFAL PD and what goes into it. But okay, here's the cool thing. I now have the bot looking at all the options market, all the assets that have weekly options. And the reason why I chose weekly options, that means that each option that I'm talking about has a weekly expiration, right? Every week. So I'm looking at weeklies, and there's about 600 tickers there, so quite a bit. But those tend to be the more liquid ones. And my bot pulls all of those expected moves every morning, and then it alerts you when any of those names hit the daily lower, the daily upper, the 2 standard deviation levels, the weekly implied moves when it tags it or goes back to it the following day, the 2 standard deviation moves, and then the monthly moves as well. So now it's like if you're if you're in the Discord, you can quickly see, oh man, these things must be moving. They're hitting their lower weekly implied moves or their lower dailies. You say over here, oh wow, this one hit its 2 standard deviation move at 3:58 Eastern Standard Time today. So if the level right here is 3508. So if I go to CNC, what did that look like on Thinkorswim, right? So if I go to here, I type in CNC and I go to the intraday time frame for the lower daily, it was right down here, basically at the close of business. And sometimes, right, if it gets way outside of that, I'll always make sure that earnings isn't happening, right? Because if earnings happens, I don't pay attention to those specific readings. But you can see if it were to come down lower, there's a high probability that it comes back and tests those levels. So pretty cool tool, pretty cool alerts. That's not all that's included. Obviously, I have, right, for $16 a month, a lot of other stuff. I have my some trade ideas that I post, just charts that are eyeballing and I typically trade. I do monthly, quarterly expected moves manually, weekly implied moves. These are directly from the options market. Daily expected moves updated every day. I have my zones, which is pretty rad. This is utilizing the bridge bands, but then I give it in a cool document that looks like this to give you an idea of the ranges. Like for example, like right here, 1028. Yeah, and this is, I have the entire S&P 100, right? I have a bunch of different stuff in the visual document. But if you go to 1028, look at the S&P 500, it's in a bullish trend. That's that green line, but it was at the upper part of the band. So what happened on 1028? If I go to 1028, look, it was right over here. That was the S&P 500 up at that upper band, and it started to kind of back off a little bit, and it aligned with the upper weekly implied move. So I do that. The Tradie Ticks, I have the entire Tradie Ticks bot, so you can type in various commands. Right? There's a pinned comment that has all types of commands where you can just get more data, whether that's like gamma levels, whale levels, all types of stuff. That's included in the $16. You have the Scout bot, which is just like a little bot that utilizes the strategy. Bullseye bot, Tradie Flow bot, large flow. You have golden sweeps, dark pool, and then I just included also cheddar flow. Some people wanted to see cheddar flow option, so I included that bot, cheddar dark pool. So just additional tools and stuff that you can utilize, and then you have access to the entire community. That's all I got for you on today's episode, everybody. If you want to check that out, I have the pinned comment has a link to there, and then also the description as well. I'll see you on the next. Bye.